Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review. Today I am reviewing The Tech by Mark Ravine. And as some of you might notice, my walls are a little bare right now. I'm moving at the end of the month, so things are going to be a little bare for the next book review or two. Yeah. Anyway, so, straight up, I gotta be honest with this, I didn't finish this book. And the only reason I'm even doing a review on it is because the publisher asked me to. Had I picked this book up just myself without anybody asking me to, and I didn't finish it, then I just wouldn't ever finish it. That's just I wouldn't ever do a review of it. But because I was specifically asked for one, I've got to do this. So, that said, I can't do the ending part. I can't describe the ending, so it is automatically getting a 0 out of 5 just for that. Or I guess technically a 1 out of 5, but still counts for 0 points. Yeah, but I can still do the other ones and kind of get into why I DNF'd this book. And I'm going to straight up state this book isn't bad. It really isn't, but it's got some serious problems to it that I really just can't get past. But let's get into this. So first off, the plot. The plot is basically this FBI agent and her team keep getting cases that are connected to one another and go towards this bigger cabal sort of thing. And on the surface, this is a really neat concept. This should have been so good, but there's some serious problems to it. Primarily, the consistent use of a Deus Ex Machina. The main character of Alexandra was said to be this super agent who has a 90-some% effective rate, but you never really get to see her do anything on her own. Out of the first 400 pages of the 730 that I read, you don't really get to see her actually at work. There's always that Deus Ex Machina device that kind of gets things done right now, quickly, in 24 hours or less. And I know that's a plot point because, they mention it more than a few times, but it's still kind of a big problem. Mostly because it just feels like there's no stakes to anything. There's a bank robbery, girls are kidnapped, a person's identity is stolen, there's gun runners, assassins, a super chemical nerve agent, all this stuff that's going on, and it doesn't lead to anything. Or at least it doesn't feel like it, mostly because there's just no stakes to it. Because they finish it so quickly, there's just nothing to it. The chapters are specifically long, and it seems to be one problem per chapter, but at the same time, there's no stakes. And that is kind of a bit of a problem. So all in all, I am going to give plot a 3 out of 5, because the idea in and of itself is really cool, but it just loses out due to the Deus Ex Machina and that there's just no stakes to everything because it's solved so quickly. Characters. This is another one that, had it been done just a little differently, had some tweaking been put into it, it would have gotten a really good score. But despite these characters having one specific personality quirk, other than they're a bit of a social misfit and don't really fit in with the rest of the FBI, so they kind of have this whole mismatched misfit family going on, which I think is a kind of a bit of a lazy and overused trope at this point. But regardless, you've got a Gabriella who's she's kind of the ditzy one, but also at the same time a bit of a troublemaker and doesn't take orders very well. At least not by anyone who's not a superior officer. You've got Dawn, who's the grumpy one. You've got Val, who's kind of the office man whore. You've got Nancy, who's kind of a kiss ass. You've got John, who's the old guy. They all fit these specific roles, and it kind of felt like there's no real character there. They're just archetypes. And like I said, on the surface, that's not a bad thing. But when you've got a book so, like, as big as this one is, after 400 pages, there should be something to sink my teeth into. Like, yeah, they've got some backstory, because most of the cases seem to have a personal connection to these people, but at the same time, I don't care about them. Like, even Alexandra, I don't care about her. Mike, I don't care about him. He's the office tech. Like, he is the tech that this book is named after. And he's a whole other level. Like, he is too perfect at everything. He's too good at everything. Like, he's super smart. He's an excellent cook. He knows how to nudge people in the right direction, the right time, the first time, every time. Like, he's just too good at everything. And it's just he's just not compelling as a character, and that kind of really sucks because I really wanted to like these characters, but I just found myself not caring. So unfortunately, I do have to give characters a 2 out of 5. Like, had just the right amount of tweaking been done to make me care about these characters, just make them feel a little bit more fleshed out, it could have done really, really well. But that's just not the case with this. So characters is a 2 out of 5. The writing. This is probably one of the major reasons why I DNF'd this book. And it's not because the writing is bad. It's not. Well, it's not great either. But it's not bad. There's just some problems with pacing. There's a little bit too much showing and not enough telling, which I know is kind of a weird thing for a reviewer to say. But when you're showing me everything and every aspect of what's going on in their day, including every meal that they eat along the way, after a while you just don't care. And I didn't care after the 60th meal in the book. It's like, okay, I get it. They eat food. I get it. They like certain kinds of food. Can we get to something a little bit more substantial now? Something a little bit more meaty for myself as the reader to sink my teeth into. Because that's kind of the biggest problem with it. I mean, there is also a whole other problem in terms of the writing in and of itself and some of the formatting. But I'll get to that in just a second. The pacing is just not there. It's mostly just kind of boring. It's not, like, with the story and everything that's going on, I shouldn't be bored reading this, but there's so much procedure that the person gets into, it really does just make it seem a little bit more boring and everything that goes into it. And then, as I stated before, there is the sake of the formatting and a bit of a problem with perception jumping. Mid-paragraph, even. Like, if it was just one of those things where it was a different paragraph and then somebody was speaking, I could have said that, that was just a problem with with the Mobi file or EPUB file or whatever it was that I got, and because they do sometimes mess up in terms of formatting. It's nothing major, it's nothing new, I can forgive that. But there's some perception jumping mid-paragraph, and that I have some issues with. Because if I happen to miss that, and I did a few times, because it's just you blink and you miss it sort of thing, you miss that, and all of a sudden you have to go back and reread what you just read because you didn't catch that one sentence that stated that, hey, we're switching POVs now. And that I don't agree with. That I don't like so much. So, for writing, I am going to give it a 3 out of 5. Like, it's not the worst written book. Like, it definitely has a lot of merit to it. There's a lot to be desired with it. But just the pacing issues and the consistent POV jumps, I just can't give it a good score. Mediocre is the best that I can give the writing. Imagination and research. It excels at it. It really does. Like, if this person's making things up as they go, in terms of how the FBI works and all that sort of stuff, then kudos, it feels real. If they actually know what they're talking about and everything is pretty legit, even better, because that means the research was done. So in either case, awesome. Like the imagination research is where this book seriously shines, and it's where I can recommend getting into it, just for that level alone. Imagination research straight up gets a 5 out of 5. Like it does an exceptional job with it. And then yeah, the ending, which I didn't get to read because I DNF'd it, so it automatically gets a 1 out of 5 or a 0 out of 5. 0 points, regardless. This is something that I don't normally do, especially like even with books that I don't like. I don't normally do this sort of thing, but it's a what I think should have been done differently. Because this book had so much potential. Like this book had a lot going for it, but it just wasn't quite there. I think this should have been 2 books, first of all. Because 700 pages, like there's got to be something there to really grip grip a reader into it in order to commit themselves to 700 pages. After 400, I was done. I could not do any more. Like I just couldn't do it. And I wanted to quit after 200. And for perspective, that's 4 chapters. Like they're roughly 50 to 60 pages each. So it should have been 2 books to start with. And that's really the only thing that I really would have said should have been done different in terms of these book, like in terms of this book. It just should have been split into 2. And that probably would have allowed for more time to get to know the characters, for maybe bring in some stakes for these missions, because like I said, like there's a whole chapter worth of neurotoxin out and about, and they gotta try and find it, and it just feels way too much like a cop procedural show where you know they're gonna find it at the end of the episode without it ever going off, or without anybody ever finding it, or without anybody ever triggering it, and it just doesn't work otherwise. There should have been just more stakes to it. Mike and his Deus Ex Machina should have been toned down like a lot. They should have. I don't even think Mike should have even really been a character that got to know the team. Like he should have been a person from the sidelines, from the shadows, and Alexandra gets these hints along the way, and she figures it out from these hints. At least then you'd see a little bit more of Alexandra in action and get to see her process and how smart she is, because she's got a 97% closure rate. I'd like to see how she does it, because in the 24-hour done and done, you don't get to see that because it's just too easy at that point. But far from that, there's not really much I would change about these books, because turning it into 2 books would solve a lot of the problems. At least I think, anyway. Because, yeah, it just gives that much extra time to figure things out. It gives that much more time to flesh things out a little bit better and a little bit more. And it just helps things along the way. But anyway, that's my thought on it. All in all, this book gets a 4.5 out of 10. Like, you can't expect a good review, or at least a good score with a DNF'd book, but it does have some merits. And I honestly hope that this author does keep writing, and I would like to read more of his work if he ever does release anything else. Because the debut has some problems to it, and it does have some good reviews as well. So I do hope that this author does continue going. And I do look forward to reading more of his work and just seeing the progression and how much this author improves as they go along. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Have a good one.